ideas that you do to build connection in family in crises?
So I kind of think that that's the biggest thing with our identity, because, I'm, like you said, I'm not picking on families that, struggled not having a dad there, but our dads, if you look at, what research says, they give us our identity. They give us that sense of safety and security. And, we want to go think of, like I said, creative solutions on how to help people with, with that problem. And then, like Neil talked about, we have what's going on with our health. And um, I know a lot of people don't think about this, or before they didn't, but right now we have an epidemic of loneliness going on. And people are not going outside, they're not connecting, and it's got a massive cost. You know, they basically say 4 times any other disease. And we need to deal with
So they
that.
actually in the health community call loneliness a disease?
Yeah, they call it an epidemic. In the UK, they have actually hired a minister of loneliness. They are hired, whatever they put on their, you know, I don't even know what the structure is called, but they've put someone on staff in the country because they know what the cost is. Um,
Wow, I would say that that is somewhat of an indictment on the church, because the Bible says God puts the lonely in families, and it's really our mandate to love our neighbor. That is, the second is like the first, love your neighbor as yourself. And so, if we are putting all of these things onto government, it means that the church, which is in every community, little churches,
yeah.
big churches, all kinds of denominations, is not reaching out and solving the loneliness epidemic somehow, but we're expecting people to go to church instead of the church going to the world, into all the world, and making disciples of families. So that's a massive indictment that a loneliness minister is a government paid
Yeah.
position. It's good that they're doing it something, but it's bad that the church is not effective in that.
Right. And again, we absolutely can be. But let me back up for a second and just give you, because I want people to understand the magnitude of this. This is research that was done in 2018, okay, pre-COVID. That 40%, 46% of Americans say report being lonely. 34% spend mealtime alone. What I can't even imagine what that number is now. 30% of all households only have one person. And more importantly, being lonely, or your brain being lonely, and I want to qualify what that means, increases our odds of early death by 26% and is worse for you than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And it has a greater risk than associated with obesity.
Wow. So it's one of the worst health crises. The inability to connect with other people, being lonely, actually spawns all kinds of other things. That's why maybe the Bible says that it wishes that you would prosper as your soul prospers. You can't prosper if your soul's not prospering. Everything shrinks. Wow. So how do you solve that? What are some? How do we fix that?
I love what you just said. That's good. I'm going to remember that. I also thought when I was putting this together, I was, God said it's not good for man to be alone. And I thought, well, he's God. He probably wasn't just talking about a wife. There was probably a deeper concept in that, because it does affect our brain and it does affect our health. And worse than that, Stacey, when we stay isolated, okay, when we stay alone, because I can be in a crowd of people and still have an isolated brain, right? Think about that. That's exactly what social media does. I'm in a crowd of people, but I don't really have any authentic connection with people. So, when we're looking at how do I solve this, I'm kind of like, hey, let's step back a second and see what's possibly causing this. What are we doing as a society? I know in North America, we're a ton more individualistic, right? Than a lot, you travel extensively, than a lot of other countries. They live a little more in community. Wouldn't you say that's kind of true?
Very true. And even the Africans have a proverb, which I've often quoted, that it takes a village to raise a child. So
Right.
they don't have even a nuclear understanding of family. They understand that everybody's there. The elders are there. They're going to watch over those kids. And they feel connected to a whole community. And growing up in a small town in Saskatchewan, as I did,
Yeah.
you have everybody knows what's going on, in the whole community, and everybody's kind of watching out for each other too.
For sure. You had aunts and uncles that you found out later weren't your real aunts and uncles, because people really actually got outside and got to know their neighbors. And here's why I really want people to fight against that, because it's comfortable right now. We've all stayed alone, we've all stayed inside to kind of just stay there. And I want to explain that when we go into that space, there's like a base level of cortisol, that stress hormone that's released when we isolate or when we're lonely, which is great if you're being chased in the woods by a bear or something. It increases that and it makes you want to do something. In this case, this is something that's kind of just staying in your body, and it affects your sleep, and it affects, most importantly, it affects how you want to connect, if you want to connect. So, your capacity to look for danger when you're really isolated or lonely goes up. So, you will look for threats. And if you just think about culture right now, I'm not going to say a word, but you just think about culture right now. I'm looking for,
Seriously.
there's a possibility that someone's, not healthy for me or dangerous or different than me. That increases in your brain because you're isolated. So it's doing it on purpose. It's saying, okay, you're in a threat mode. Let's start looking for danger. So I always tell people, think about being like in a dark cave. This part of your brain, the visual acuity part, goes up because I've got, hey, there might be a snake moving in this cave, right? But at the same time, your natural compassion for others in your brain goes down, because right now I'm in isolation mode and I need to take care of numero uno. So, my ability to look for danger goes up. My ability to have compassion for you goes down. And we call that alienation.